Hello everyone, this is Vishwas and welcome back to our Microfrontends crash course series. If you're following along with me, we have created our first Microfrontend video a couple of months back where we discuss all the basic details about Microfrontends. In that video, we started with what is Microfrontends, why we need it. Then we talk about what are the different pros and cons we need to take care while working with Microfrontends. And finally, we worked on actual implementation by creating 3 different React applications. In that implementation, we created 2 child React application, or we called it as a Microfrontends. And finally, we integrated those 2 child application into one parent React application. For implementation, we have used Webpack 5 module federation plugin, and we have seen how exactly we can exposes the component from our child application and how we can import those component into parent application with the help of module federation plugin. Now, if you haven't watched that video, I will highly recommend you to watch that video before continue on this video and get all the basic understanding around the micro front ends. For today's video, we will continue working on our existing micro front end applications, and here we will create one more child application in Vue.js, and then we will integrate that application into our parent React micro front ends. Now, before starting on actual implementation, first let's go through the application that we implemented till now. Here we have 3 different applications. This is my first child application working on port number 3001. And in this application, we created couple of generic component. So this is my card component. This is short card component. And whenever we are using this component, we just need to pass the appropriate data, and this component will display the data that we pass as a props to it. Then second child application is independent one. We are just showing the product to-do list where we can add the required products and then we can delete it. And finally, in my parent application, we are using those 2 generic component in the first hub of the page, and in second hub we are integrating our second child application. Now if I go to VS Code, we will see in the components folder we have generic component application. In to-do list folder we have that product list application, and in MF app folder we have our parent application. Now if I go to components folder and look for my Webpack config file, we will see we are using module federation plugin here. And if we come down, you will see we are using exposes property to export some of the component to outside world. Then if I go to my parent application and look for my Webpack config file, we will see we are using module federation plugin here. And for importing the components, we need to use remote properties, remotes. That's all about the existing application. Now, what we will do, like we have created one more application in Vue.js here. Here we will use Webpack 5 module federation plugin, and we will integrate this application in our parent. So first, let's understand our Vue application, and then we will start with our actual implementation. Now, let me open Vue app folder. At root level, you will see the package.json file where we have created a couple of scripts to start our application or build it. Then as a dependencies, we are using Vue.js. And for dev dependencies, we are using some Babel configuration file, then different Webpack plugins, Vue loaders, and then Webpack specific dependencies. After that, if you go to Webpack config file, if you go to top, we are running our application in development mode. The application will start on port number 3003. Then we are using some resolver. That means whenever we are importing file, we don't need to pass the required extension. And then we are using few loaders, that is view loaders or babel loaders, to handle the respective file conversion in the Webpack. And finally, we are using some plugins. Now, if you go to src folder, we will see app.view file, where we have exporting the default component, and it's having setup method and which returning some message, right? And finally, we are using that message in h1 tag, and below that we have simple paragraph. Then we are using this view component in our index.js file. We are also importing the create app from Vue.js. And what we are doing, we basically calling the mount method from create app, and we just referring to our root HTML element. And finally, we are exporting our mount method here. Then if you go to public file, you will see one index.html file, and here we have our root element, Vue app. This is all about code, very simple application. Now let me run this application and you will see how exactly this application is looking. For that, let me go to Vue app and we'll run our application. For that, I will use npm start. I already did the npm install. So whenever we are working on application, first do npm install. That means install all the dependencies, and then start our application. So application is open here, which is running on port number 3003. And here we have very simple message. The message is present in h1 tag, and then we have simple paragraph. And now our next step is use module federation plugin to import this particular component in my parent application. So let's begin with the actual implementation in VS Code now. For implementation, let me go to Webpack config file of my vueapp.js, and we need to import module federation plugin here, right? For that, I will use const. We need to import it as a named export, and it will be imported from Webpack and webpack.container. And from that, we need to import module federation plugin. Let me copy this, go to plugin section, and now we will use that plugin here. To use plugin, we need to use new keyword. Then we have module federation plugin, and it will be a object. Now, as we discussed in last video, whenever we are using module federation plugin, we need to use three different important properties. The first property is name. This will be a name of my application, and for a name, we can give any name of your choice. I will give name as a Vue app. Then we need to use file name. The file name, we need to follow the standard, and in our case, it will be a remote entry.js, right? And third property is depend whether we are exposing or importing the components, right? If you are exposing component, we need to use exposes property. It will be an object. And if you are importing component, then we need to use remotes here. In our case, we only require expose because we are exporting the component. But there could be a chances that the same application is used for exposing some of the component, and some of the component can be imported. This will be a case in nested micro frontend. For our case, we don't require remotes in child application, and we are only required exposes here. The exposes contain the key value pair, and here we will give name of our component. We can give any name of our choice, that is starting with dot slash, and I can give name of my choice here, that is Vue app. Basically, this name will be used when we are importing the component in our parent application. And the second property or the value will be the exact path of our component. In our case, we are bootstrapping our application from index.js. So we have all the code in index.js, and we are exporting the mount method from here. So we will use src and index file name here. And only those changes we will be required in our child application. Let me save the changes. As we made changes in our Webpack config, let me stop the server and run it again. Let's wait until it's complete. Yes, our application is running again, and the application is working as expected. And now if I look for remote entry file, we will see the module federation plugin exported or expose all the required code here. And if I search for index, we will see it will be available somewhere in the export configuration. Here we have exports, and we have index.js file. Now we are done with exporting the component from our child application. Now let me go to my parent Webpack config file and start importing our component there. In parent, we already using the module federation plugin, and if you go here, we just need small changes to import our component from Vue application, right? Or Vue.js application. For that, I will give name of the component here. Again, this is of your choice. For now, I will give Vue app host name here. And then we need to give the appropriate path to import that component. For that, first thing, we need to use the child app name here. In our case, if you go to Webpack config file of child and look for the name will be Vue app here. And we need to use @ here, and then we need to give the remote entry path of your child application. In our case, it will be this one. Yeah, and all those changes will be required in our parent application Webpack config file. Let me save the changes. Now we have successfully imported the component from Vue application, but now we need to call this component, right? In our previous video, right, we are importing React components into React application. So for handling the lazy loading, we have used react.lazy, right? So we are using react.lazy, and finally we are using suspense block to handle the lazy loading of our React components. But now we cannot use React lazy here because we are importing the Vue.js component here. And for that, uh, things are simple. Like we are exporting the mount method from our child applications, right? If I go to Vue application and look for index.js, we are exporting the mount method, and this mount method is having some Vue.js template code, right? Now we need to get this template in our parent application and somehow reference that template in our parent application React code. For that, let me create one complete new component. to handle or to import this Vue.js code and referencing and handling the side effects. So let me go to the component folder and I will add one more component here, and I will give name of that component is Vue.js, right? Vue.js.jsx file. First thing, we need to create this component, that is Vue.js. Then this React component will return something. For now, let me return div here. Now let me export this component. For that, we will use export default and component name, that is Vue.js, right? Yes. Also, let me import React on top. Yeah, this is all about the basic React things. We just created one component. That component will return something and we are exporting that component, right? And now to use our Vue.js component, we need to handle few things here. The first thing, we need to import mount method, mount from Vue.js app. So first do that. For that, things are simple. We need to import that mount method here. The mount method will be exported as a named export, right? If I go to index.js file, and if you look at here, we are exporting it as a named export. So I need to use mount here. And now how exactly we are importing it? The things are simple. If you following in the previous video and go to app.js, right? We are using this name component or name of the component from my parent application Webpack config file. That means if I go here and look for the name, that name will be coming from here. And the second name, right? Now the second name is coming from application level Webpack config file. For that, I will go to Webpack config file of Vue.js, and the name will be used from here. Whatever name we are using in exposes property, we need to use that name. Yes, the first thing is completed. We are able to import the mount component from Vue.js application. Now, second thing, we need to call this component or method asynchronously, right? We need to use the lazy loading, and somehow we need to use this method asynchronously, right? Call mount method asynchronously. And to call this method asynchronously, we need to handle the side effects, right? And for that, we need to use effect from React. So let's import use effect now. Yes, we will call use effect here. Use effect will take two parameter. The first one is callback function, and the second parameter will be, sorry, we made some mistake. It is arrow function, and then second parameter will be dependency. So in our case, we need to run this use effect only once whenever the component is loaded, and then we need to call this mount method here. So we are done with step 2. Now third step is pending, and third step is related to reference, right? Reference the template code from mount method and add it to our React app, right? React or parent app, basically. And for referencing the element in React application, we can use ref hook, right? So this is simple use ref. If you familiar with React, this is very simple things. But if you don't familiar with React, still things are simple to understand. Just understand these three things. So we are importing the user ref hook. First, we need to initialize it. For that, I will use ref and use ref. I will initialize it to null, right? Then I will use this reference in my div element, and for that I will use ref is equal to ref. And third thing, we need to use now our template code, right? The template code written by mount method, and for that we need to use ref.current. It is taking the current element, or it is taking the current property, and which will referencing to the Vue.js code. I think that's all changes we will be required for importing the Vue.js component and creating our own React component, right? Now let me go to our app.js file and I will use this Vue.js component there. So in app.js, I will simply import that code or that component Vue.js from /components and Vue component, right? Let me save these changes. Now, before importing this component at application level, like we have made multiple changes in our parent Webpack config file, like we have added this particular entry. So let me restart my parent application again, right? For that, we will use npm start. Let's wait until it's complete. Yes, my parent application still now working as expected after adding that entry. And now what we will do, we will try to add our Vue.js application after our header. So if you go to app.js file, we will see we are using header here, right? That is just returning the header. And then we have short item and detailed item, right? That is printed here. So just before or just after our header, let's inject our Vue.js component now. For that, what I will do, I will simply use that component here. Let me save the changes and go to my parent application, and we will see we successfully imported our Vue.js component in our React parent application. So things are simple. Our Vue application is working on port number 3003, and our parent application is working on port number 3000, right? And we successfully injected our child Vue.js microfrontends into parent React application. Just to understand in detail, let me go to Vue.js app again and made some changes in our Vue component. So instead of hello Vue, I will write welcome here. And once we save these changes and refresh my parent application, it should reflect it here. This is nice, right? Like we can use the diverse technology and inject those different technology, smaller micro front ends into parent application. I think that's all for today's implementation. I will push this demo code into the GitHub and share link in the description. From your end, let's go with the code and try to do similar kind of implementation at your end and get more understanding around the micro front ends. I will also suggest just don't watch the videos. Along with watching, let's go with the coding and do your own implementation, and that is best way of learning, right? And finally, while implementation, if you face any issues or if you have any queries regarding to micro front ends, you can comment me and I will respond as soon as possible. Now for next video, let's go with one more child micro front end application with different technology stack and implement that with our React parent application. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching and see you in next one. Till now, thank you. Bye.